Hey guys, welcome back to an episode of Quips with Steven Seagal. I'm our son Tim HD, and this week, Steven Seagal is... Attrition, starring, of course, Steven Seagal, but also Louis Fan, I believe that's how I pronounce it. If you don't know him, he is Ricky in Story of Riccio. Really fucking good movie, much better movie than this. I've reviewed it before, I fucking love that movie. I even have a weird bootleg shirt of it, I liked it so much. But, this film... was released in 2018. It is a kind of kung fu-ish, of course, action film, written by Steven Seagal, which you know, obviously, is Disaster, which it is. Now, I'm going to jump right into this. At first, I'm not going to be negative at first, or at least I'm not going to try to be. So the few positives that this film has is that the action is fine. It's whatever. It's, of course, not... like, on the level of other amazing kung fu films that I've watched. It's not even on the level of, like, your average Hong Kong kung fu film from, like, the 70s or the 60s or the 80s. I'm gonna be completely real. Most of the action is Steven's stunt double doing it, and the other stuff is, like, the fucking fight scene between Anakin and Count Dooku in Episode 2. Just, like, close-ups of him doing this, and that's pretty much it, of his contribution to the action. While the other actual skilled guys do the other good, better work, like the actual Hong Kong martial artists do the actual good kung fu, while Steven just, yeah. And with that being said, while obviously this kung fu is probably the best I've seen so far, obviously that's not saying a lot, because of the shit that we've seen. And obviously the kung fu is not good because of him. Steven is like the fucking lowest bar you can do. The other martial artists did a decent job. They did decent, and I just kind of wish that they were in better movies, and not this. And now, the pros are also, the film is decently shot, the music's alright, and overall, the actors, some of them are fine. I think the actor that, Louis Fan, I think he did pretty good. Obviously, him being a much better actor than Steven also helps. I think he actually kind of outshined Steven in a lot of scenes because he actually showed emotion, which Steven is, of course, incapable of doing. But yeah. I think now it is fine to get into the negatives, and which this film is full of. So this film, I think, is a great example of the principle of Chekhov's gun. If you haven't heard of it, so I'll give a quick explanation here. Chekhov's gun is if you explain that there's a rifle on the wall in, like, the first chapter. By the end of the story, or by any next chapter, that gun has to go off. If the gun does not go off, there's no reason for it to be there. It is a superfluous detail, and there's no reason for you to have it. Basically meaning, if there is a detail that you add into the story, and you emphasize this certain detail, it needs to be important, and it needs to add to the story. It needs to have some kind of meaning within the story. It needs to do something. So the examples of that in this is there's quite a few. So, okay, so the first example is there is a scene with this guy, and Steven's just, like, walking down the sidewalk of this, I think it's Thailand, I believe this film takes place in, like, this village, and he's walking down the sidewalk, and this guy, he's like, I will fight you to the death, or to life, or whatever. He's, like, challenging him to a duel, and Steven's like, I will accept you, I'll accept your fight, and they fight, and it's a quick fight, of course. Steven never wants to get hit, and he kicks this guy's ass, and Steven's, like, he sits down, he's like, the guy's like, I see you steal, you'll steal from this guy's store all the time, and Steven's like, well, you know, actually, I help him and his family and whatever, and he, like, gives them money and whatever, and, like, their thanks to him is them letting him, like, just take a couple fruit with him, and the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, like, let me be your student, whatever, and Steven's like, so your first test is that you will need to take a bag of feathers, and you'll go up the highest mountain you can find, drop all the feathers, put them back all in the bag, and then bring the bag back to me. I think, like, by the end of the week or whatever. And guess what? That never comes back. That guy that fought Steven never comes back. You think at the end of the movie, like maybe at the end there'd be, like, a falling action where all the details come together and, like, the guy, like, returns to Steven's house with the bag of feathers? No. No. He never comes back. He's never important. And another detail, which is, I think, even more ridiculous, is there is a scene with Louis and Steven, and there's, like, this master that trained them, right? This old guy. And they're just talking, hanging out, just kind of talking about things, and then eventually, out of fucking nowhere, just completely out of nowhere, this is the first scene with this old master, by the way, this is the first and only scene with this guy, and he's like, they're talking about how they didn't tell Louis these things, or, like, they're talking about how they left him out of something, and he's like, we are strict to those who are closest to us. And he's like, what does that mean? And he's like, you are my son. And it's like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? And guess what? Again, never comes back. There was no reason for Louis's character to be the son of this old master who never appears again. But I think the only reason they did this is because the actual actors that played the two characters are actually father and son. I'm assuming that's why they did that. But still, doesn't make any sense. Like, you can't just put scenes... Like, Steven is not a good writer, and this movie just proves that. Because you can't just put random fucking scenes in there for the sake of it. Because then you don't have a story, you have an amalgamation, an abomination of bullshit. And that's what this film is. And, yeah. Then there's a couple other random fight scenes. Most of the pointless scenes in this film are fight scenes that are just there for the sake of fighting. Right? There's no other reason other than the blanket statement that, oh, Steven's a good guy and he helps people. Yeah, we could collect that from his fucking brainless monologues that he shares at the end and beginning of the film. And also, the dialogue is just so fucking bad. So, the dialogue is so bad in this movie, and I wish I could give you examples, but I'm going to be frank with you, I cannot remember. But I just do remember that the dialogue was fucking terrible, and we all know that's because Steven wrote it. And the story is also bad, because there are so many things in this film that could have been done way better. That could have been done much differently, and if Steven Seagal was not in this movie, and there was just this was just a normal Hong Kong kung fu film with actual good fucking Hong Kong kung fu tropes and being handled well, I probably would have liked this movie. But I didn't, and so there was so many scenes that I think could have been done much better, and I'll give a couple examples, maybe two examples. So the first example is there's a chase scene in, like, the beginning of the movie, like, near the beginning of the movie, of the girl who's, like, this mythical powers, like the back of the box says, mythical powers, where she is going to get kidnapped by this, like, triad boss guy, right? But the only reason that I knew that they were trying to kidnap her was because I read the back of the box. If I didn't know why, I would have no idea why they were kidnapping her to begin with. I would have no idea why they're just kidnapping this random-ass girl. If I hadn't read the back of the box synopsis, no idea. And they're chasing her. So they're chasing her through this, like, random street. And it's just, like, she's just, like, walking down the street, and then these random fucking guys just come out of nowhere and, like, hey! And they, like, start chasing her. And it's, like, I guess they wanted to do this, like, set piece with all, like, the colored, like, fabric and whatever to, like, make it pop out, maybe. But, like, she's supposed to be, like, a healer, right? Or she, like, uses her magic to heal people, right? Like, why don't you show that, like, to an extent? And it, like, maybe have them, like, burst down into her, like, her office or whatever while she's healing someone, and then they kidnap her, right? Or maybe we have, like, a guy who's, like, spying on her, who watches her. Like, we build up the kidnapping. We don't do the kidnapping immediately. We build up to it over a couple scenes, and then they kidnap her. Right? And then maybe we can develop her more as a character before she gets kidnapped, so her kidnapping becomes more impactful for the audience. Like, I'm not a writer, but I at least know basic understanding of, you don't just throw random scenes in here because that's where the story has to go, right? I understand that part at least. And another example is the fight scenes. Now, of course, I said they're fine. The martial artists in the film carry the fight scenes. Of course, Steven doesn't do jack shit, because he's Steven. But I want to say this. The fight scenes, Steven never gets hit. Of course, he never does, because it's a Steven movie. But usually in a kung fu film, when they build up the evil big bad guy, that the whole film, he's, like, demolishing people, he's evil, he's killing people, he's a maniacal madman, right? And you hate him, you grow to hate the villain, and you want to see him get taken down, right? And by the end of the film, the hero just barely emerges victorious. You know, they're battled, and they're bruised and battle-scarred, but they emerge victorious, and they get the freeze-frame ending. No. Usually the fights are usually, like, 10, 15 fucking minutes. Like, the, best kung fu, final fights are, so fucking long. But, it builds the suspense. It makes you want to see the villain. He gets cocky. And you want to see him get taken down. And the hero is the underdog in this situation. Right? Steven is not the underdog. Because he doesn't want to see himself in a situation where he could be on the lower end. Where the villain is actually stronger than him. So the final fight with the villain is more of an ass-kicking instead of an actual fight. Steven literally just plows through the main villain like it's nothing. He's built up through the whole film to be this dangerous, fierce, ruthless, evil, strong guy. And then he's defeated in 30, 45 seconds. And Steven just literally chops his arm off and stabs his throat and whatever. And he just dies. And it's what was the point of building this villain up if you're not even going to have a satisfying or good or intense final fight? If he's just going to... It's like in a video game when you're max level and you fight the final boss after your third playthrough, after grinding all the side missions. That is what it is like. You beat him in 30 fucking seconds. And another thing I haven't even touched on is his squad. Now, of course, the entire reason they're here, aside from the woman being the sex woman, and that's why she's here, is to be the sex appeal. But the other guys, they're here to just be people that can shoot guns at the end. They're, unlike, Rikio's character, Louis' character, he actually has, is there. He's, friends with Steven, and he's, serves a reason to be there in the plot. But these guys... they're shown once at the beginning of the movie, and we never see them until the very end. And again, it's are we supposed to care about these characters? Because you give them it's not like they're just background squad characters. They're there, and they give them names, and you're expected to care about them. But why? Why should I care about them? I shouldn't, because you've given me no reason to, aside from the woman being the sex appeal, right? You've given me no reason to care about these characters because they're not characters. They're not even caricatures, I guess, except for the woman. But this is just you could have just had Steven walk in and body everybody. I think that would have been funnier. And an example of bad dialogue near the end of the movie is, we go in like shadows, we exit like shadows, or something like that. And instead of, I would expect they'd go in stealthily, right? No, they walk in and just fucking shoot two guys, and they just immediately go guns blazing, shooting everybody. And it's well, so much for going in like shadows, exiting like shadows. You literally just shot everybody. That's not shadows, man. That's fucking sun. You are as clear as sun, clear as day. You are there. And yeah, the whole film is like that. Terrible dialogue, terrible writing, terrible characters, and overall, just a very bad movie. But now, would I recommend it? I say this every review, but does it sound like I would recommend it? No. If you're a Steven Seagal fanboy or fangirl, somehow, if you like Steven Seagal to the point where you would give his life for him, maybe, I would recommend Steven Seagal to you. But anybody else, no. I would not recommend this film under any circumstances, unless you want to laugh at bad writing. And with that being said, I think I should get to the ratings. And so now, real movie rating is about a 3. It's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it's definitely not the best. 3 out of 10. Now, ironic enjoyment, it's really not that ironically enjoyable either, so I'd say a 4 out of 10. Now, Steven Seagal rating. Now, this film is alright. It's certainly better than other terrible Steven Seagal movies I've seen. It's not torture, it's just kind of whatever. So I'd give this maybe a 6 on the Steven Seagal rating. So now, let's give a quick rundown. So, real movie rating, 3. Ironic 4, and Steven Seagal rating is a 6. And, yeah, I think I've said all I need to say. Thank you so much. Peace. So, guys, I hope you liked this video. Share with friends, subscribe, turn the notification on, comment below how much you liked it. And I'm Return HD, and this has been Quick Quips with Steven Seagal. And I'm Return HD, Aikidoing off. See you on the next episode, guys.